Alright guys, welcome back to another one of Dr. Squirrel's famous guide videos, the best E7 guides on YouTube. Today we're going to talk about how to build a proper Cleave team. Now as always, I try to keep my videos as fast and informative as possible, so I've broken this down into 7 main topics. Number 1, what is a Cleave team? Number 2, what are the core components of a Cleave team plus a showcase? Number 3, what are some hero examples for each of those components? Number 4, how to start off with a basic cleave and progress through kit compression. Number 5, what are the benefits of a Cleave team? Number 6, what are the drawbacks of a Cleave team? And number 7, this is important, some common Cleave counters and how to adjust to each of those situations. So let's get started right away. Alright, so topic number 1, what is a Cleave team? This will be a quick one. A Cleave team is any team whose ultimate goal is to wipe out the entire enemy team before they get a single turn. Now you can also wipe out a team quickly with single target attackers like Sirmia, but for the purposes of this video that is not considered a Cleave. A more typical Cleave is something that uses something like Judge Kisei or BBK or Ludwig or something, where a single AoE attack wipes out their whole team. So for those of you who are really big beginners, that's what a Cleave team is. It's any team that seeks to wipe out the entire enemy in a single strike before they even get a single turn. So let's move on to the next topic. Topic number 2, what are the core components of a Cleave team? You can really break down any proper Cleave into 5 main components. Role number 1, CR booster. Role number 2, attack buffer. Number 3, defense breaker. Number 4, stripper. And number 5, primary cleaver / damage dealer. So let's explain each of these roles and why they're so important. I have this example up here so I can tell you. So number 1, CR pusher. This team has 2. The job is to boost the team. Fast speed and high attack are typically mutually exclusive even with God tier gear, because even with God tier gear, if you have speed subs, those are subs and roles that could have went into offensive stats. So you want a fast CR pusher because Cleave teams need to go first. So in this team, it's CDOM and Tywin. They both have CR pushes, and Basar pushes up CDOM because he's running 100% crit on this team. Number 2, attack buffer. Tywin's the attack buffer here. Attack buff gives you 50% attack. And I'm not going to get into math of it, but it's 50% of your total attack. Like on your equipment stacks, 50% doesn't equate to 50% of your total attack. But the attack buff does. So if you have 5,000 attack buff makes it 7,500. So it is a big difference. Your cleaver needs to have attack buff. Number 3, defense break. Tywin's also the defense break. Defense break is the best offensive debuff in the game. It reduces their defense by I believe 60 or 70%. They changed it at some point. But the point is you do massive damage with defense break. If they have an Ori's Adamant defense, it's almost mandatory. We'll discuss that later. Number 4, stripper. In this case, Basar. Now in the earlier tiers like gold, silver, masters, it doesn't matter that much, but later on a lot of people are running immunity, and guess what? Number 3, defense break, it does not land if they have immunity. So you're going to need a stripper at the higher tiers to strip immunities so you can land the defense break for big damage. And number 5, the most obvious role, the cleaver. You need a very strong AoE cleaver that can one-shot their team once the setup is complete. And those are the 5 main components of a Cleave team. Now let's see it in action. Alright, so now let's have a showcase of each of these 5 components so you can see in action why each one is so important. Now we're probably going to miss on Lilius here, but first up is our stripper. Notice that their entire team has immunity, so my Tywin cannot land any defense breaks unless she strips it off. I Luxac out here and hit the Lilius. Let's see if we get the strips. We get all 4 strips, so now my Tywin can land the defense breaks. I miss on Charles, no big deal, he's not the tankiest one. So here we get 3 defense breaks so that my cleaver can do more damage. And now our next role is CR push and attack buff. Tywin has both thanks to compression, and now we get another CR push thanks to compression, and CDOM does pretty decent damage. So we'll soften up this Charles here, and now our final role, the primary cleaver, swoops in for the big damage, and we wipe out this team. So That's the power of having all 5 components in a team. You do big damage, and you can wipe out even the tankiest of teams as long as all of the strips and defense buffs, defense breaks land. So hopefully that explained why each of the 5 components are important and what each one adds to the Cleave team. Let's move on to topic number 3, hero examples for each of these roles. Obviously this game has so many heroes I can't cover all of them, so I'll try to go over general popular options. So number 1, CR booster. Now any hero that has really fast base speed and a 20% full team CR push or better fits this. So really good budget options are Ruzid and Judith. The gold standard is something like Alots or Tywin. But other options that are also good are things like Rose, DJ Basar, Athletica, Cdom, Biken. Again, anyone with full team CR push that's 20% or greater. Rule number 2, attack buffer. Who's a good attack buffer? Again, Oxlots is the gold standard. Tywin is also really good. You can use Tamarin if you're also using Isseria on your Cleave. Other options are also like Rose, DN, Sinful, Angelica. Anyone with a full team attack buff, even like Guide or Aether, although you never see him. Basically, anyone with fast enough speed to go to the front after your CR pusher is good enough. They don't need that much speed because a CR pusher will put them up. Number 3, defense breaker. Who are some great defense breakers? Tenebria, Bellona, Tywin, Isseria. Obviously, AoE defense breaks are preferred, and 100% defense breaks are best. Tywin is probably the gold standard for defense breaker here, but any AoE defense breaker works. Isseria is also fine. She's single target, but again, if you use her with Tamarin, she's fine. Number 4, strippers. Basar is the gold standard here because he has a CR pushback, which is a pseudo CR push for your team. Push him back, push him up. But you can also use other heroes, like a budget option would be Gerardo. I used to use him back before I had Basar. You can also use, I forget his name, the blue mage guy that has the ML version. I forget his name. He works fine. Cerise, but she's limited. Anyone with an AoE strip or 1 turn cooldown reduction, 1 turn is enough for immunity, will fit the role perfectly fine. But they keep running Basar, so just get Basar. He's the gold standard. And number 5 is cleavers. Top tier for legend tier is probably like BBK and Judge Kisei. They hit very hard. Judge Kisei can also push back turns and stuff. But if you don't have those heroes and you're in the lower tiers, literally anything that does high damage can work. Regular Vildred, Arbiter Vildred, Ludwig, SSB, says anyone that does a lot of AoE damage can fit this role just fine. As you get into the higher and higher tiers, you're really going to want to have an S-class cleaver, but in the beginning, anyone with high offensive stats will do the job just fine. So let's move on now. Topic number 4, starting with a basic cleave and progressing through kit compression. Don't worry, I'll explain what kit compression is soon. So this is the most basic cleave. A lot of you guys doing PvP may have run into something like this already. The classic Ruzid, Helga, random defense breaker, often Bellona, Tenebria, or Tywin, and then a final cleaver like BBK or Ludwig or Sez or anything that hits really hard. You'll notice it has most of the components. It has a CR pusher, an attack buffer, a defense breaker, and a damage dealer. And the other thing is this build is really cheap to do because you also bring 2 speed imprints, lowering the overall speed requirements for the team, allowing you to go first. So for anyone who doesn't have the heroes, the meta ML5 heroes to make a godly cleave team, this should be your starting point, and honestly, this can carry you all the way up to champion with the right gear. Now the second part of this discussion is kit compression. What do I mean by kit compression? It's making this team better by replacing each of these components with heroes that can do multiple things at once. So let me show you an example right here. Right now, Ruzid is giving a CR push and Helga is giving an attack buff. But if you have a hero like Rose, guess what? Rose has a move that gives you attack buff and CR push. So now you don't need Helga anymore because Rose provides both the CR push and the attack buff. So now you have room to bring a stripper. Remember, that base team didn't have a stripper, which isn't that important in the lower tiers because not many people are running immunity, but later on it becomes very important. But because you compressed it, now you made room to bring another hero. Another good example of this is something like Tywin. You need an attack buff and a defense break. Tywin's S3 has a defense break and his S2 has an attack buff, and he can use them both in one turn. So this is what I mean by kit compression. Look at those 5 components that we discussed previously: strip, defense break, attack buff, CR push, damage, and see if you have heroes that can bring 1, 2, 3 or more of those components in a single kit, and then you can compress the team and bring extra heroes, whether it be something like Fallen Cecilia to make the rest of your team more tanky, and really make your Cleave that much more powerful. That doesn't just apply to Cleave teams. Kit compression applies to Bruiser teams and everything, but in Cleave teams it's more obvious, and as you get more and more heroes, you're going to notice that you can bring more and more powerful Cleaves by having heroes that fulfill multiple roles at once. Another common one is Cdom, because she has a CR push, but also incredible single damage potential to get rid of the tankiest targets on their team. So going back to that original Cleave team, Ruzid, Helga, Tenebria, BBK, if you're a total noob, start with that template, and as you pull more heroes that can fulfill multiple roles at once, start swapping out the pieces until you really start building an expert level Cleave. Next topic. Number 5, what are the main benefits of a Cleave team? Well, the main benefit, honestly, is speed and efficiency. You can always concoct like a tailor-made Bruiser offense for every defense and spend like 5-10 minutes per match to guarantee the win, but is it really worth it for like 7 conquest points or whatever it is? And yeah, for the most part, it's a waste of time. You don't want to spend an hour every day doing arena. You want the matches over as quickly as possible so you can spend your flags. Now, I'm not saying lose on purpose or take on fights that you can't win, but if you're confident in your speed, you can just cherry pick teams. Like, let's look at this bottom team here. Charles, FCC, Ruel, Arbiter. That's actually pretty scary, but at the same time, there's a 0% chance that they're going to outspeed my Bassar. So if your Cleave is strong enough, you can hit these kind of teams 100% of the time and win 90% of the time. The only times you won't win are when like their entire team resists your like defense break or something, or Charles Elbrus is 100% of the time, but that's okay. It's a numbers game, right? If you win 90% of the time, that's good enough, especially if your only goal is to stay in a certain bracket. So those are the main benefits of a Cleave team: speed, efficiency, and depending on what you're targeting, decent consistency. Number 6, what are the drawbacks of a Cleave team? Well, the main one is your team is very squishy. So number 1, you're squishy. And that means that generally if you get outsped, you generally lose. So it becomes a dice roll, right? If you're in a low bracket, let's say you have like a 270 speed Oxlots and you're in gold for some reason, you can be 99% sure you're going to outspeed everyone. As you climb up the tiers into champion and legend, you can't have much confidence in your speed because everyone is so fast. Like if I attack this Bassar defense with my Bassar defense, it's 50-50, and honestly with Reforging, it's probably like 20-80 that he'll outspeed me. And that means that it's not a very consistent team to bring unless you have great speed gear. And also, let's say that both our Bassars are the exact same speed. Remember that there's a 5% speed RNG at the start of every round, and that means even at the same speed, even if I had 5 more speed in that Bassar, there's a very good chance I'll get outsped and lose. Number 2, everyone knows people want to Cleave, so there's always a Cleave counter in there. The most common one is they'll put someone fast in there to try and outspeed you. The second one is something like an ML Ken, where if you can't one-shot him, he's going to counter you and kill your Cleaver really easily. Or something like a Charles who will proc an Elbrus during your setup and ruin your setup and kill you. There's ways around that, so it's not that much of a disadvantage. And number 3, something that won't matter to most of you guys yet, but later on, as you go into High Legend, you're going to run into extremely geared teams where everyone has really good gear, and they're also rocking like triple S imprints, like triple S health imprints, and cleaving becomes borderline impossible against those teams unless you also have equivalently good gear. Those are really the only drawbacks. Otherwise, cleave away. All right, topic number 7. What are some common cleave counters and how do you deal with them? This is important because so many people are cleaving, people are always setting up defense teams to try and deal with it. Let's talk about some common ones. By far the most common one is they're going to stick someone fast on their team to counter initiate. Cleave teams usually have to go first, and if they don't, they lose, so they'll stick something like a Bazaar in there to try and go first and mess up your rotation. Best way to deal with this? Bring a speed imprint. You'll notice Shuri has a plus 14 speed imprint. He gives the back line plus 14 speed. So if you do that, if you guys are similar in gear, you can guarantee that your team will go first. And you can even bring more than one speed imprint if you can get away with cleaving their team with bringing that many. That's a common one. Second common one are counter heroes, something like ML Ken. Their goal here is to survive your cleaver, counter your cleaver, and kill him instantly, and then they'll slowly grind your team down. Best way to deal with that? Bring an Aureus Knight like Fallen Cecilia, or Krau's also a very solid option because he has one-hit kill potential. Basically, give your cleaver some survivability so they don't die instantly to a counter. If they have too many counters like a Charles and an ML Ken, they both proc, you're probably going to die anyway. Just either dodge it or use a defense breaker to one-shot them. Remember, you don't care if your setup heroes die, but if you can't survive the counter, you need to one-shot them, so you need the defense break. Another common counter is an Aureus and Adamant team. I don't see any here, but let's pretend that at the top, Lilius had Aureus and Charles had Adamant for some reason. That's 35% damage mitigation. Some people will just try to get really tanky and survive the team. Again, the answer is you need to bring a defense break. If you don't have a defense break, you should probably dodge it because they'll probably survive your cleave unless your gear is really, really amazing or something like that. But always bring a defense break against Aureus plus Adamant teams. Otherwise, you won't crack through, particularly at the higher tiers. And finally, let's talk about Arbiter Vildred. Everyone hates him when they're running Cleave. The only real counter to him is to have a cleaver with an extra turn mechanic like Judge Kisei or BBK. Though they're really good because they kill him once, they revive, they get an extra turn, and you just kill him again. That's the easiest way to deal with Arbiter Vildred. On that note, another thing we want to talk about is Moonlight Dreamblade. A lot of people cleaving hate Moonlight Dreamblade. The best counter to that is dodge. If you think they're going to carry it and you're really sick of losing to it, you can roll the dice. Remember, it's only 20%, although with Arbiter Vildred, you have to hit him twice, so it's 20% times 2. And the third option is Oath Key. Oath Key completely nullifies MLDB. The problem is at the higher tiers, you don't have a damage artifact, then you don't do enough damage with Oath Key to kill some of the tankier teams out there. So the other option that I use the most often, again, is to bring something like Fallen Cecilia, because Moonlight Dreamblade Arbiters generally hit for less than Alexa's. So basically you just bring something like this and you can actually tank the damage. So those are some common counters to Cleave teams and how to deal with them. If you think of any other things you struggle with, just leave it in the comment section below. Let's move on. Alright, so I think that about wraps this video up. I hope this guide was helpful to those of you new to cleaving who are beginners and wanted to get some advice on how to build the proper Cleave team. If you have any questions or comments, just leave it in the section below. I reply to 99% of the comments. And best of luck. I mean, if you don't have a Cleave team, you really should build one because it's going to make your PvP grind way, way, way more efficient. You don't want to have to bruiser all the time in Arena. It's just a giant waste of time. Anyways, I hope this guide was helpful. Thanks for watching, and make sure you like and subscribe for more Epic 7 guides. Till next time, guys. Peace out.